What's up, everyone? It's Andrea. Today, Byleth is a new punchable phase. It may be time for Picard to take another holiday, and we ask the question, where do you even store electricity lassos? Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 7, Episode 2, entitled Liaisons. This episode was written by Roger Eschbacher and Jacques Greenspan and directed by Cliff Bolt. As alien dignitaries visit the ship, Picard's shuttle crashes on a desolate planet where he meets a woman who's been stranded there for 7 years. What are your initial thoughts on this episode?
You know, I think you nailed it with that summary because at least it picked out something in the episode that was some kind of plot.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, I guess that's what the episode was about.
So I feel like that reaction alone gives me what your final thoughts are.
Yeah, it's my initial, it's my during, it's my final. Looking at the thumbnail before I watched this episode, I was like, what is this? I have zero recollection of this at all. And then I was like, okay, but from this title, Liaisons, I think this is that really stupid episode where there's like 3 ambassadors and they're all really outrageous and they're doing some kind of experiment and they're super insufferable. That's what I wrote for my initial thoughts. And my final thoughts are very similar. I do think they were insufferable, but I think the delegate who really wanted dessert was probably not that bad. The other two, I'm just
he
like
was the
over
most
them.
fun. He was the most fun.
He was the most like unobtrusive, I think, into Troy's life. But anyways, what were your initial thoughts about this this particular little gem here?
My initial thoughts are very much like yours. I had zero recollection of what this episode was whatsoever. All I thought after I read the plot, I thought, I really hope this isn't like Future Imperfect, which is that episode where Riker is being messed with that young alien who was like left there by his mother and he created a simulation for them to bond over. I was like, I hope it's not something like this where it's like they're just messing with Picard and this woman isn't really who she says she is. This episode was written as an homage to Stephen King's Misery, which is about a mentally disturbed fan who holds a novelist captive.
I did write that in my notes. I was like, wow, this really feels like Misery. I was like, this is giving me Misery vibes right now about how, Picard can't get away from this woman. But I had no idea that that's what this was. If that was the case, I wish that would have been the whole episode. We should have just done that. We don't need the delegates. Figure out a way to make it work. Maybe then we don't, we have the rest of the ship trying to come to the rescue or something.
Yeah.
That would have been a much more interesting storyline than whatever this was.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I was like, okay, this reads like Misery. And it's perfect because I feel misery watching this episode. It's just really not worth our time.
Misery was a very good story. Good meaning like horrifying, terrifying, captivating.
It was a compelling story. Yeah, engaging.
And this was not. So, okay, besides that, any other thoughts on
No,
this?
that's about it. That's about it. No, as we actually, so let's open this episode. As we open, we see Worf in his ceremonial dress uniform, and he looks sharp, but he doesn't know what to do with his sash, and he's kind of like grunting and fussing.
Sash was so cool. I really like that.
Cool. I was like, oh, he's not wearing his normal baldric. Like that's kind of cool. It's like a silvery with like a little.
It's like a fancier one if that's possible, because his is pretty fancy. And
yes, it is.
This one's more of a sash than like a full metal chain linked thing. But it looked very fancy.
It did look very fancy. So Riker comes in, he's like, what are you doing? They'll be here any minute. Like, what are you doing? What's the holdup? And Worf is like fussing with his uniform and he's like, they look like dresses. And I was like, thank you. Finally, somebody said it. They do look like dresses.
I put that they look less like dresses than they did in season 1. They were like straight up, like I feel like the ceremonial, I always call them like dress robes because I'm a Harry Potter
dress
fan.
Uniforms. Yeah,
but their ceremonial uniforms I feel like used to go down to like their knees. But these just look
you're right.
A little bit. These just weren't tucked into their waist like their normal shirts, but they didn't. They were the regular length. They went down to like their hips.
I think you're right.
I was actually disappointed that they weren't more dress like. Because I was like, that would have made more sense with his comment, because they used to be like, what are they wearing? Why are they wearing these like big giant gowns?
You're right. You're right. They did kind of go to the knees. You're right. I guess there has been a shift. I love that Riker, when Worf is like, they look like dresses. I love that he counters with, that is an incredibly outdated and sexist attitude. I am surprised at you. And he kind of walks away and Worf is like, oh, maybe my bad. And Riker turns and he goes, besides, you look good in a dress. And I was like, there it is. There's Riker's little smarmy comment. So the next thing we see, we're in the shuttle bay with Picard and Troy and a few others are like welcoming the ambassadors aboard. Picard is actually wearing his like Captain After Hours outfit, which I was like, everybody else is in a dress uniform. Why are you in like your cash setup? And we get these 3 Yarans who are coming on board. And it looks like one of the Yarans is actually a pilot who's going to take Picard back to the Yaran homeworld
or whatever.
Yeah, to have like that version of like sort of a first contact in a way.
Which I was just like, no, my captain's not going by himself to some random homeworld with aliens we just met. Sorry, guys.
We just met them.
We just met you guys, but you guys feel free for the 3 of you to be on the ship for as long as you want. And we can chit chat right on about here. Yeah. Like, I was like, this is crazy. This is another one of those like questionable security moments for me. I was just like, no, I don't think so.
I don't want to do that.
I'm not going to be doing this. But they decide to do this. And so the pilot's going to take Picard. The other 2 are going to stay on board, and they're kind of assigned keepers. So Troy is assigned to take care of Ambassador Laquelle, I think.
Laquelle, yes.
And then Riker is assigned to take care of Ambassador Byleth. And at the very last second, Byleth is like he wants Worf to be his guide, but he says it in the most like weird, demanding, controlling kind of
where
way.
He's like, I don't want you, I want this one, which is like you're so otherizing Worf as a subspecies, you know, that's like, good Lord. Yeah, he's like, I want this one, as if he's not a person.
Yeah, he wasn't a person enough to even be spoken to directly.
Exactly.
He spoke to Riker on behalf of the one he wanted to be his like guardian or whatever.
Yes.
And you just see Worf. Actually really like this part where Worf is like, no. Like he's shaking his head, he's about to say no. And then Picard and Riker are looking at him and he's like,
he's basically mouthing, help me the whole time. The whole time.
Like, that was well done, Michael Dorn, because that made me laugh. He's like, yes,
okay,
of course.
Yes.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
I know that feeling at work when you're like, no, of course I'll do that. I definitely know that feeling.
Welcome to my job. Yep. Now, so Picard and Riker, I love that Picard and Riker look at Worf and they're like, you are taking him. You are taking him.
Say yes, buddy. Say yes.
Yeah.
He's like,
and then Picard goes, good luck. And he just boards the shuttlecraft and off he goes. And we're like, wait, where are you going? What? This is not a good idea. Come back.
So I guess this isn't the first time that they've met. This is the first time they've met these people, but I guess it's not their first time interacting between the Federation and the Yarans, because Picard does say this is their first cultural exchange. So if we've learned anything from the cultural exchanges with the Klingons in the past, cultural exchanges are not the way to go. It just does not work well with the Federation. But we're going to try it again. So in this case,
this might work for us. Yep.
Exactly.
Every time.
This exchange is going to last for 7 days. So I feel like that's reasonable because I don't know how long they were doing these exchanges with the Klingons. I feel like it was months or something crazy. But 7 days feels like a very reasonable amount of time to just like get the lay of the land, look around, meet some people. Perfect. So they go off on their separate ways. And we start out with Troy and her delegate in 10 forward at a reception, like a reception banquet.
A lovely looking reception.
Yeah, it didn't look gross. It didn't look, like space food gross, because sometimes they try to do that. And it also was so much better than Hutch's, like, nonsense.
It's chocolate covered espresso beans and like million Scoville peppers. Yeah.
And marshmallows or whatever it was. Yeah.
You know what? Okay. Because of that conversation we had, I did pause and I looked at all the food and I was like, damn it. It does all kind of just look like food. Okay.
It looks legit, right? It all looks like really regular food.
It looked like space food, right? Like some colorful something, but there was nothing that I could be like, those are marshmallows, like colored pink or something. Like it just like kind of regular food.
Well, yeah, and even the cake was like, it was like chocolate cake, but it was a big chocolate cake, in a cool domey shape.
It was kind of like a gigantic Ferrero Rocher chocolate with like some shavings on the bottom. And I was like, okay,
yeah.
this works.
And they did that with which I thought was really smart because I forget the first dessert. I think it was like apple pie or peach cobbler or something like that.
It was a peach cobbler, yeah.
And I was like, that's really smart for them to just be like, this is cobbler. This is cake. They just went with like, let's just keep it simple. Let's make it things everybody knows. And then we'll just, every once in a while we'll throw in some alien name, an alien cake, but it looks a lot like Earth cake.
Peruvian sponge cake or something. And you're like, yep, that looks like an Entenmann's sponge cake. Okay. Yes. Now, I will say, I do actually love that. That was, I love that that's actually pretty smart because Starfleet is an Earth-based planetary federation. So it's like, okay, we're showing the Ayarans sort of where we're from. And as Federation, like most of us are kind of from Earth. So like, we'll show you like Earth stuff. So it's like, cool. Okay.
Or at least for sure on the Enterprise, almost everybody's from Earth. It seems like.
Yeah. Now, I do love that, like, while she's pleasantly chatting with Ambassador Loquel, he is just piling his food like I would at an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's just like the plate is going to break under the weight of all the food you're putting on here. And he's like totally bypassing like the pleasant like tongs and serving spoons. He's just grabbing shit with his hands and putting it on. And I was like, and he is just like, tell me more. Okay, really? Like he's super engaged with whatever she's saying, but also just absolutely slapping food on his plate. And he's like, well, what do you eat? And she's like, well, normally I eat desserts. And then we sort of learned that Yarans don't eat for pleasure. They only eat for sustenance. At which point I'm like, okay, I'm out. Because
So you're not going to be visiting their homeworld for 7 days?
I will not be doing that. Or I'll be like sneaking snack foods in my backpack or something. Yeah.
Maybe there's a portable like replicator you could just like put in your little backpack, like the little backpack that Picard had, and take it with you. That would be amazing. If they have replicators, it can't possibly make any of the delicious dishes that are shown on this table.
No,
it's not programmed for any of that. It's only programmed for nutritional supplement 364 or whatever. So he was like, eating for pleasure, this is amazing. So they go and sit, and he's just like in heaven. He's having a great time. So you're like, okay.
Well, and Troy does say, because he's like, well, your plate's empty. And she's like, yeah, it's empty because I'm waiting till we get to the desserts. Like, that's my thing. And he's like, what is a dessert? Like, we don't eat for pleasure. And that's when Deanna's like, most species of the Federation have pleasure foods that they eat. And mine is this chocolate cake. So she gives him a little piece and he tries it. And he's like, like he is blown away. And off they go. He actually they start going to the table. Do you notice he stops and turns around and just takes an entire tray of desserts off the buffet table and walks back with it?
Yes, I thought him taking the whole tray of desserts was hilarious. But I also thought that her feeding him chocolate cake was weird. Yeah. I was like, I get that his hands are full, but like maybe take a piece back to the table. I don't know. That was just weird. But whatever.
See, I didn't think that was weird. That's probably something I would do where I'm like, here, try this. But I could totally see you being like, let's just wait till we're all at the table and you can eat with your own hands. Like, that's 100% you.
Absolutely no reason for this. There's no reason for us to stand here and be like, open up. Say, yummy, yummy, wasn't it? Like, who does that to the delegate? But anyways, she didn't do all that. Obviously, she just like gave him a bite. But it was weird to me. That's what I pictured in my head. I was like, what is going on? Well, it wasn't meant to be weird. I took it weird just because I'm weird, but it wasn't meant to be weird here. It was very normal and very polite and very adorable. And he takes a whole tray of desserts, which he couldn't possibly eat by himself, along with that plate of food, which he couldn't possibly eat by himself. And they go to the table and they chill out. And you're kind of like, okay, cool. Well, they're off to a good start. And then you switch over to Worf and his delegate and Beverly eating at a table, the most silent, strained, awkward meal of ever. And the delegate, which one's this one? Byleth. He slams his food down because he hates it, and he demands that Worf brings him more. And Beverly very politely explains, it is customary for people to serve themselves. So you really need to go serve yourself. And he's like, no, this one better go get me more food. And she's like, ambassador, like, let me explain this. Maybe I need to say it more slowly. That you need to go, serve yourself. And Worf is like, no, it's fine. I'll go do it. And again, this weirded me out. I was like, why? Other than just getting away from the table because he needs a break from this man. Yes. But I'm like, no, like, stick with Beverly. Be like, yes, go serve yourself. That's exactly what this is. This is our culture. This is the environment. Like, go ahead and serve yourself. Or you can sit there and be hungry. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
I'm not moving. Like, I refuse to stand up just because of your attitude. I refuse. But
yeah.
But I did take it as maybe Worf just needed a break anyways.
I mean, I love that you're always looking on like the bright side. You always find the silver lining. I will say that about you, and you're very good at that, which I'm not as good at that. But yeah, I mean, I could see that it's like, okay, it's an ambassador. You got to do whatever you can to like make their experience pleasant. But I'm like, if you're going out of your way to be an absolute asshole, that's on you. Like, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing when you're being completely unreasonable. And this is such a power move where he's absolutely like, I'm an ambassador. You have to do whatever I say. Now do it. And it's like, ugh. Just everything about enjoying having control over people and being able to make them do whatever you want is just so, in Spanish, I would say desgraciado to me. It's like so like ill-mannered and disgusting in general. Like, you and I would never treat someone like that ever.
No, it's completely unacceptable. And I thought Beverly's approach was perfect. She very politely explained the customs, as opposed to getting offended and taking it personally. It's like, just so you know, here are our customs. And I feel like as an ambassador, you should already known that, fool. Yeah. Right? That's your whole thing as an ambassador, is that you get to know about other people's cultures before you go and ambassador yourself. Like, that's you're supposed to know that stuff. Totally. And we find out that there's a whole reason for this. But at this moment, you know, you're just like, yeah, you should know what the customs are. Not every single custom they've ever had, obviously, because you're a foreigner, but you're on their soil and it's your job to learn their customs and to like imitate them. So if it's a custom where it's like, we all feed each other off of our forks, then that's what we do. That's what we all do. You know, we like you go with the flow. So I thought Beverly approached it wonderfully. And poor Worf, you know, Worf stumps off to go and cut him some meat, and he is cutting that meat like nobody's business.
Really taking his anger out on that roast beef. Like, I wrote, he takes his rage out on the roast beef.
Yeah,
like,
he does some rage cutting.
Yeah.
And Data comes over to console him, which Data of all people comes over to console him. And he's just like, you know, buddy, if you found some common ground, I think that would turn the situation around. And Worf is just like, common ground. Byleth is demanding, he's temperamental, and he's rude. And Data goes, well, you share all of those qualities in abundance. Maybe you should try to build on that. And hits him on the shoulder like, way to go, buddy, and walks away. And you just see Worf holding his butcher knife like, I'm about to stab 2 people today.
Yeah,
like, oh
I know. I love the way Data says it, and only Data could say something like that. Or maybe Guinan is the only other person who could be like, you also share all those qualities. So maybe work with what you got, you know?
Yeah, but Guinan would have been joking and Data was not. He was just like, gosh. Oh, perfect. You're absolutely just like that guy. And he's like, what?
And Data's like, solve that problem. Off I go. You're like, I don't think he did. Okay, you know what? Doesn't matter who.
Check and check.
Yes. Now, on the shuttlecraft, Picard is making pleasant chit chat with Voval, but that pilot isn't having it. He is being just another dick.
Standoffish.
Yeah, he's being like Byleth. And Picard goes, what's our ETA? And it turns out it's 17 hours and 34 minutes. And Picard makes the funniest Fuchi face, is what we used to call it in our family, like when the little kids make like a kind of a face. Yeah. And we're like, oh, they've got Fuchi face. He's like, maybe I'll go like write a report or something, like a report that's going to take 17 hours and 35 minutes to finish. Just
maybe I'll go take a nap or like watch a movie or something. There's got to be
space Netflix. There's got to be a streaming service somewhere
to sit here and chit chat. And the guy was extremely like, Voval was very standoffish. She was very much like, yes, no, I guess. He wasn't only giving one word answers, but he was doing it with like a lot of attitude.
Tons of attitude.
17 hours, my word. So he stands up, Picard stands up to go back to his quarters and, you know, watch space flicks, when suddenly the power goes out and the ship basically needs to make an emergency landing on a nearby M-class planet. And you're like, again, this reminded me of that episode. I'm blanking on the name, but the episode with Picard and Wesley Crusher and the random captain.
Yes.
Got cocooned later on.
Yep. Yeah, it totally reminded me of that.
Where you're like, oh no, now you're going to be stranded on a deserted planet potentially. Or, I mean, it's M-class, so it technically should probably have life, but they never do. So you're going to be stranded on some M-class planet with somebody who's this guy with a total dick. And then you're going to have to wait for rescue. And this is going to really suck.
And
so
if Laquelle was like lovely to talk to, and Byleth and Voval are just nasty a-holes, this doesn't bode well for the kind of people he's going to meet on the planet. I'm like, 2/3 of the people you're going to meet on this planet are going to be dicks. Like, I don't know if I want to go
but there's
to this planet.
That's true.
I don't know if I want to do this.
And it's going to be 7 days on the planet, assuming they didn't, before the crash landing on this other random planet.
Yeah.
It would have been a 7-day experience of this culture that could all be potentially like Voval and Byleth, which would be
awful.
Not a fun week.
No.
So anyways, they crash and you're like, oh no. And when they land,
hold on, before this, did you notice that okay, this energy disruption field like knocks the shuttle systems and they're kind of like doing the bounce and they're flying along. And I love that Voval goes, there's an M-class planet in the system. Can we make it? Let's try. And the next shot is the shuttlecraft crashing like right into the atmosphere of this planet. I'm like, what do you mean there's an M-class planet in this system? There's one right in front of you. Like, it's not in the system. You're almost on it. What do you mean by in the system? Yeah, I thought that was really weird.
Like, as if it was really far away.
Yeah, and they're like, they just got to try to like limp the shuttlecraft like to this.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, fools, it's literally taking up the entire view screen. Like, it's so big, you're right in front of it. You can't even see any other planets because
there's an M-class planet 1,000 feet away.
Yeah.
You can make it. I hope so. Let's try.
If gravity tells us anything, we're gonna get there one way or another. Whether we'll survive is a different question. But
lucky for them, because there could have been who knows what kind of planets around, but there was a planet with atmosphere that they could crash on and not die. So that worked out. When they land, we see that this planet has electricity striking every surface of it. Like, the rocks have electricity coming out of them, the ground has electricity coming out of it. Yeah, and I just thought this is the same, and they've used this set a million times, but this particular orientation of the set with the electricity reminded me of the episode in season 1 when they meet the Ferengi for the first time.
For the first time, yes, yeah.
Which I'm totally blanking on the name of that episode as well, but it doesn't matter. Don't go watch it. It's
a crappy episode. It's the first time we ever meet the Ferengi. Yeah, and there's like a space wizard that's keeping the Enterprise hostage,
and he's the one doing the electricity shooting or whatever. But in this one, and then the Ferengi also had like electricity lassos.
You know what? Which we never see again. Thank God.
Which we should, because they're cool. An electricity lasso,
electricity pool noodles. Yeah,
that's a great weapon, man. Just imagine that.
I'd rather have a phaser though, because then with phasers you don't have to have any kind of skill. You just sort of point and shoot. With a lasso, like you gotta take like
not
lassoing
if it's
classes.
Electrified. You don't. You just.
But what if you miss your target? Okay,
it's electricity. You just throw it towards somebody and it's gonna hit something. And I just imagine that weapon on a ship. Like, what spacefaring culture has a lasso of electricity in an electric I don't know. It just was so fun. I feel like they could have done more.
Where do you even store an electricity lasso? How does it not short circuit the entire ship? Again,
so many good questions that we never got answers to.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and we're back. We're back to season 7, which feels like season 1. Because everybody is on the floor of the shuttle. It's very like the photo perfect crash landing where they're all like on their backs facing up. Picard and the pilot are out cold. Picard comes to. Voval seems like he's hurt badly. So Picard grabs a tricorder and sort of detects a structure about 2 kilometers away. I'm going to go get help. He's like, there's some kind of plasma energy outside. Don't go outside. What is it with plasma atmospheres? The Star Trek is really leaning heavily this season and last season on plasma atmospheres. And I'm going to wager a bet that the Enterprise sensors won't be able to get through it. I'm just guessing. Like,
I guess it's just a really easy plot device to explain why we can't just communicate with them or beam them out of trouble easily. Yeah. Or send a shuttle to get them out of trouble easily. If we throw on a bunch of like EM distortion and plasma and blah blah blah, then that gives it gives more drama. It does, but it is kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah. Well, Picard leaves the shuttle and he goes wandering around trying to find help. But before he gets more than like 5 steps away, he's hit by lightning, so he's out cold. And then
he's hit in the face. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
I was like,
what a lightning strike! My God.
How did he survive getting hit in the face with light?
I don't know.
They could have had that hit him anywhere in his body, but it hit him right in the face. Well, anyways, it knocked him out immediately.
Yeah, and then you see a pair of hands like grab his shoulders and drag him away. And then, the way that they sort of direct this is all you see is a silhouette of someone. Like as lightning strikes, you just see their shadow kind of moving him. So you're like, oh my gosh, what's
It's
about
very
to happen?
ominous.
Yeah, yeah. So at this point, we're back on the Enterprise. Worf is giving Byleth a tour of the ship, but Byleth is still being a total dick. He's like, what is the antimatter replenishment rate in the engines? You know, he's just asking these questions that you just don't have the information off the top of your head with.
Yeah, that's what the computer's for. Questions like that.
Yeah, and this starts to feel a little bit familiar for me, where I was like, oh, is this that episode with that guy who pushes Worf to the limits to see like when he'll break? Like, is that what this is? Like, it was starting.
Oh, this is when it kicked in.
Yeah, this is when it kind of kicked in, where I was like, is this what's happening? Poor Worf.
Yeah, poor Worf, and 7 days of this nonsense. So he's somehow managing, and then we see Troy and Ambassador Loquel. And they're walking through the hallways, and he's drinking some yummy juice and trying to get her to drink some yummy juice. And he's just really into food and drinks. That's kind of the thing we get from him.
Do you see like that giant cup he has of like papaya juice or whatever? It looks like he's in Vegas, and he's just got one of those giant things of alcohol people can walk around with out in public with.
So my brother just went to Vegas for the first time like 2 weeks ago with my little cousin. And all he ever wanted was a giant drink, because that's what you see on TV for Vegas. So he was like, I'm going to get a giant drink. I'm going to get a giant drink. So when he gets back, I'm like, how was it? Did you get your giant drink? He was like, I got 2 giant drinks. He got one that was like a pyramid.
Oh my God.
Some obnoxious amount of liquid, like 70 ounces or something crazy. Okay. And then he got like a giant football. And I was like, buddy, how are we cleaning the football? How's that going to be a thing? I don't think that's... I don't know.
The people in Vegas who manufacture these have any sort of concern for how it's going to be kept clean. They're expecting you to just be passed out drunk by the time you're done drinking it, and then it just rolls into the gutter and gets washed away. Like, that's, I think, what
Sorry,
they think.
Ocean. Yeah. Anyways, so it's a giant Vegas style drink, except for it's not in the shape of anything really fun that I feel like they could have gone with. But whatever, it's still fine. It's a giant drink. It's way too much liquid for any one human to drink, in my opinion.
Yeah. And he makes Deanna take a sip, because he's like, try this. And she's like, after last night, like, I had so many desserts last night, I think I'm good. And he's like, no, try it. And so she takes the world's tiniest sip. Like, she lets the liquid just touch her lip. Yeah. And then she's like, and then gives it back to him, and they resume their tour.
And she's just like rolling her eyes, because at this point, she can't take one more sweet, which I can't say I relate to. So anyways... I was like, can I no, not really. So then actually exactly one time, because there was like this chocolate tasting tour, but other than that, no. So they see like a mom and her son walking down the hallway, and suddenly, and Troy's really giving the whole tour. She's like, now we're going to go to level 8, where we're going to learn about blah, 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 blah. And she turns around, and Laquel's gone. And when she finds him around the corner, he's just marveling at this child. And he's like, what is this? And she explains that these are our children, they're our offspring, they're our young. This is how we reproduce. We make like a tiny version of ourselves, and it grows up to be a bigger version. And she was like, how do you reproduce? And they do some kind of cellular something, and they come out of a pod fully grown.
Yeah.
So he was
like, that's really kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. It's kind of weird, but cool. Definitely cool. Definitely, like, I like how they're showing different ways of replication.
Yes, exactly. Where it's like, it's an alien. They could do any manner of procreation. So I think it's kind of cool. Yeah,
especially when the alien species looks so much like a human. It's nice to hear that they have a really different way of some biological processes, because they look very human. There's nothing too outrageous about them, and they eat like humans, they walk like humans, so to hear that there's something actually alien and unique about them is very interesting. So he's really like excited about the child, and he's like, can I feed the child desserts? Oh, the mama's like, sure. And so they're like, let's go, Timmy, or whatever his name is. And they go and get, some more desserts. And Troy's like, great, more desserts. Awesome. Woohoo. And again, this is another one of those scenes where I was like, if I was the mom, I'd be like, sir, please stop touching my child. I don't know you. But then I was like, you know what, though? That's what I would do right now in today's day and age with where I live. But if I was in the 24th century on the Enterprise, it's probably a whole different thing. Like, it's such a safe place in general, minus the Borg and people running around. Yeah. It's usually a really safe place. And people, Troy's not going to be showing somebody who's around who's like a danger as far as anybody knows. So that was that. So, okay, my big take home message with this. Laquel and Byleth We don't need them. We don't need them. There's no storyline there. There's no plot. There's no beginning, middle, end.
No.
It's just more of the same. Byleth is just a dick from beginning to end. Laquelle is just eating desserts the whole time. Like
the whole time. Yeah.
That's it. And we just get different scenes of the same thing. So I feel like those were like a B and C plot that didn't really add to the story, in my opinion.
Yes. I totally know what you mean. It's just more of the same and more of the same and more of the same. So I feel like maybe at this point, we could just wrap up Laquelle and Byleth's storyline, and then we can focus back on Picard as a crash survivor.
Yeah.
Because there's
that's a story.
Yeah.
There is some kind of transition or transformation in that.
Girl, I read the subtext on that. You're like, it's a story. It's not a good story.
Not a good story.
It is a story. Yeah. Okay, well, look, so Worf tries to get out of this assignment. And he is like pacing around in front of Deanna and Riker in the observation lounge. And he's like, he's rude, he's arrogant, he's this, that, and the other. And Riker is like smirking to himself and just thinking this is the funniest thing because he was going to be in charge of Byleth.
Mm-hmm.
And now Worf is dealing with
this. He dodged a bullet.
He totally did. And he's like, permission to be reassigned. And Riker's like, denied. And I was like, damn, that's cold. That's cold.
Because it would have been reassigned to Riker.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm not going to mention that there's a conflict of interest here, but what I will say is permission denied. And so they say, we're going to have this poker game. Laquelle's already coming. He said he's bringing the desserts. So why don't you bring Byleth and we can all play some friendly poker together, which they do. And the whole time they're playing this poker, Laquelle is just stuffing his face with chocolate bonbons and he's having the best time with these chocolates. And Byleth is just being a dick. And then he steals some chips off of Worf. And Worf is like, those are my chips. And he's like, you're mistaken. They're mine. And essentially, like, it ends up just building this, like, antagonism ends up building to an explosion. Mm-hmm. And Worf and Byleth.
Here's my favorite line from Worf. If you were not an ambassador, I would disembowel you right now. I was like, oh my God. I've never been threatened with disembowelment. Like, I loved that. I know that.
No one's threatened me with disembowelment.
Right? Like, I just love that because most people, when they're gonna fight, that's not the phrase they would use. And I'm
going to kick your ass or something.
Yeah. And I just appreciate that touch from the writers to make it a very Klingon threat. Like, I will disembowel you where you stand, because he could have said behead you or something. But I was just like, oh my gosh, Worf, over the poker table?
Yeah.
Yes, over the poker table.
But if there's anybody who's going to threaten me with disembowelment that I would not actually be worried that they would actually go through with it, it's Worf.
It's Worf,
because Worf, like,
any other Klingon would just do it. They wouldn't threaten. They would just do it.
When have we ever known Worf to like
to actually?
It's like, come on, dude. Anyway,
outside of the holodeck, that's for sure.
Yeah, they end up like squaring up, and Worf just kicks his ass, and Byleth gets thrown around.
Okay, so after this, I would disembowel you because you're, if you weren't an ambassador. Byleth goes, don't let my title stand in your way, and pokes him in the chest really hard.
Really hard.
And Worf is just like, son of a, and picks him up and throws him across the room.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And Riker and Troy are just watching with their mouths open. I was like, Riker, sir, this is your time to step in and be like, all right, apologies, Ambassador, let's get you to sick bay or something.
Yeah.
He didn't even stand. They're just watching like, mm-hmm. And then, Laquelle's just eating chocolates. He's not even paying attention to any of this.
He is not. He's literally just sitting there, like, eating his chocolates and paying attention to his cards. Like, he is not even
still looking at the cards. Mm-hmm.
He's not even noticing the fact that there's a whole brouhaha, like,
there's a full-on brawl. I mean, the ambassador's on the ground. He gets up. They're kicking each other and punching each other and wrestling each other. And you're like, what
and look what this like
is going on?
And he offers Deanna a chocolate. And Deanna, like, very absently staring at the fight, takes the chocolate and puts it in her mouth and keeps staring.
Yeah, it's basically eating popcorn when you watch a movie is what's going on with Troy. And her mouth is just open. She's, like, eating the chocolate.
100%!
This scene was probably the best scene in the whole episode. And was it worth watching the episode for this? No. But this was entertaining at least. You were like, oh, cool. At least something's happening. So at one point, Byleth's on the ground and it looks like he's not about to get back up. And Worf is going to go back for some second helpings. And then Riker comes over and is like, hey, cut this out
enough.
And it's like, oh, this is enough. It wasn't enough before when he threw him across
you didn't
the
stop
room.
this. You didn't stop this before, but okay, sure.
Worf is already pissed. And I actually love that Worf kicked the crap out of this guy because nobody else would have done that. nobody else would have done that. Like, they
No.
would have been like very professional. They maybe would have walked out of the room. They maybe would have said something nasty. But I just love that Worf was just wailing on this guy because he deserved it.
Yeah.
And so when Riker pulls Worf off and Worf is like, still fuming, Byleth is like, suddenly he completely changes his tune and he's like, excellent, excellent, wonderful. I need to go record this experience in my journal, and like runs off. And you're like, what the
What?
So Riker and Worf are just like, huh? And we could just wrap it up because it's the end of the two of them.
Yeah.
Turns out these two are here trying to, part of their ambassadorial duties are to understand human experiences from a personal standpoint. So instead of asking questions about these experiences, they want to have them themselves.
Yeah.
So Byleth's job was to experience antagonism and like strife. So that's why he's been acting like this whole time, because he wanted to feel, what does it feel like when two people are at odds with each other? And so it culminated in a huge brawl, and that he felt like that was like, the end of his research. Like that really, which was smart, because it would have been the end of him if he kept going in that fight any longer.
Yeah. So he as soon as the fight is broken up, Byleth totally becomes just like a normal, pleasant person. He's like, thank you for the experience. I'm going to go journal this. So yeah, he was sent there to experience antagonism. Laquelle was sent there to experience pleasure, which I guess the Iarans don't have as part of their experience in their culture. So that's why he was just stuffing his face with chocolates, which I was like,
he chose to experience pleasure in only food and drink.
Yes, with food and drink. Yeah. So it's like, okay, listen, that's actually a pretty awesome gig. Like, are you guys taking applications for ambassadors? Because I want to do that one. I want to do that.
Are there any openings specifically for the pleasure one? No?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Antagonism, like, whatever. Yeah. I'll join the wait list. That's totally fine. Now, we don't want to reveal what Voval's experience was yet, but something is going down. Picard comes to in this kind of like a hull of a ship, and he's got what looks like some broken ribs. He's in a lot of pain. He's got this
flashing, beeping, cool device stuck to his stomach. And I was like, it looked really, really cool. That was a really neat prop that they created.
That was a really cool prop, right?
Yeah, because it looked like it had hooks and was like digging into his skin, but of course it wasn't. It was stuck on. Yeah. But that's what it looked like.
Yes.
And it was like beeping and flashing, and he went to touch it and it like zapped him. And he's like, oh, and he went to like stand up and he was like, oh, and he was like too much pain and he laid back down. You're like, oh man, something's wrong. He's hurt, and this must be some kind of like fixing,
like a restrictor device or of some sort, or something.
Yeah, some kind of something that's supposed to help him with all of the damage that happened to his body when he got hit by lightning in the face.
Yes. Totally. Yeah. And so there's a woman in the room with him, and she shushes him. And as she turns to leave, Picard's like, wait, there was a pilot with me. He needs help. And the woman turns back and she says, he's dead, and walks out. And it's like, oh no. And I was like, is this the pilot in disguise? Like, what's going on here? Like, already this is already seeming like suspicious. We've been through enough.
She's very odd.
Yeah. Well, like we've been through enough Star Trek episodes where things like this can be like kind of like frame of mind, like manipulations of your reality. So I've been through enough TNG trauma to know something is up with this woman, right? So she comes back sometime later and has brought Picard food, and he says the room looks like a Turellian cargo freighter, and she said she was a passenger on the ship when it crashed, and she was the only survivor, so now it's her home. Her name is Anna. Turns out she's been alone here for 7 years. And I'm like, you've been alone.
Hasn't gone insane somehow.
Right. And I'm like, you've been alone here for 7 years and your clothes are perfect, except for this very artistic little cutout in one shoulder. Like, come on.
Yeah, her dress was really cute. I love those style dresses of like the flare.
Yes.
It was really cute. And it very like, this is one of those examples of them doing space casual.
Yes.
It does look futuristic, but it also looks very regular. Like it wasn't shiny mylar. It wasn't plastic sculpted around her neck and head or whatever. It wasn't extravagant.
More real. It was more real.
It was more real, but it looked like it fit that world, and it looked like it fit that freighter. That freighter looked so cool. Like that to me felt like a scene from Star Wars. Like that kind of rusty, and with all the browns. It was beautiful. Like that set was really beautiful. I would love to just sit in that couch and just look around.
Totally. It totally looked like Jawa, like transport kind of vessel, you know, that's like on Tatooine. It's got the big kind of tracks and they sell their little robots on the side of the road. Like that's kind of, it looks like the inside of that, honestly, where I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, you're right.
It looked really, really cool.
Very spacey.
This woman's very odd. And I kept wondering, if you've been here for 7 years, how do you even remember how to talk? Like when I don't talk, like on Monday, I work from home. And on Monday, I had a meeting, like one meeting early in the morning and no other meetings. And I didn't talk to another human until like 3 p.m. And I didn't realize it because I talk in my head all the time.
Yes.
So I didn't realize I hadn't said anything out loud until I went to like answer the phone or something. And it was like, hello. Like my voice hadn't been used all day. So imagine 7 years. But she was fine. So she's fine. And you're like, okay, she's been here for 7 years, but she hasn't gone crazy. Her clothes still look pretty great and she can talk. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Picard's like, okay, we're going to get out of here. Like, take me to the shuttle. And she's like, no, you've broken 3 ribs. You have a restrictor device. It's keeping you immobile on purpose while they heal. And I was like, that's kind of neat because there's nothing you can really do for broken ribs.
Yes. I broke my hip once years ago. And it was like, just stay in bed for a couple months till it knits, which I did not do. I was like, I'm so bored. I went for a jog.
With a broken hip. This is my friend, people. Andrea goes for a jog.
It was mild. It was only mildly broken. Okay. Like it was fine. It was fine. It was mildly broken. It was fractured. It was fractured. It wasn't even broken.
This is one of our many differences. I had a broken hip, so I went for a light jog.
Well, listen, okay, that was I'm gonna say in the before times, before the pandemic, where I was like physically active all the time.
Gosh.
Since the pandemic, I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere. Also, I work a job that's very like emotional, like mentally exhausting.
That's so when I see you skateboarding on Instagram all the time.
Yeah, but skateboarding, like I'm just standing on a board and my dog pulls me like a sled dog. So I'm not even really exercising. I'm just standing and just maneuvering a skateboard around. It's hardly anything. Anyway, okay, the point is, so he sends Anna to the shuttle to get some help because he's got this restrictor device on.
Yeah, so he tells her to get a specific device from the shuttle that's going to help him communicate with his ship and get them off this effing planet. And she's like, will do. As she walks out, though, she locks the door. And I was like,
from the outside.
I don't like that.
I'm like, I don't like this.
Why does this lock from the outside? If this was a freighter, shouldn't doors open on both sides?
Yeah, kind of weird, right? So Picard notices that. So when she comes back, he's like, why did you lock the door from the outside? And she's like, to protect you. There's some dangerous animals.
Do the dangerous animals use doorknobs?
I know, right? Is this Jurassic Park where the velociraptors can like open doors with like, come on.
If it's not a velociraptor, you don't need to close that door. There's literally nothing else that's going to get inside. You don't need to lock the door.
Yeah. And like, I love that she's like, there's just a dangerous animals. Yeah. I thought the same thing. I was like, can they turn the knob? Really? Okay.
Twist it and pull it back.
Yeah. Twist, then pull. Really? Yeah, exactly. What the hell? Now, something is wrong with the comm panel. She did get it, but it looks like it's been hit by a phaser blast. And I'm like, yeah, already. I'm like, nope.
Now, and she goes, you lose trust for this woman. Trust, right?
She goes, I used a phaser to cut it free. And I was like, sure you did, girl. And now Picard is getting suspicious too. And she gives this whole soppy speech about how she hoped to be rescued at first. Then she would go over to the ridge and look down the gorge and dream of jumping off. And I'd be doing anything to get the fuck out of there at this point. I'd be like, let me just limp away.
What got me about this, it didn't make me feel suspicious. It just made me dislike her a lot, which was after she was like, well, I used a phaser to cut it free. And then it's like, you used a phaser to cut it free. And then you hit it again with the phaser. Get out of here. When she said, you can fix it, can't you?
See, yeah.
And he's
no,
Shereese, you and I can't fix that.
We've made this really clear. You and I really hate the whole
damsel in distress,
the whole dumb, helpless woman routine where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe you're not a pilot, maybe you don't know the technology, but like, yeah, it drives me nuts when I see very smart, capable women acting stupid to get what they want. And I'm like, please don't do this. Like,
you survived for 7 years. Like,
on your own.
You're not done.
All you've got is one tiny rip in your clothes. What have you even been eating? There's nothing but rocks and lightning on this planet. Seriously.
And like, apparently dangerous animals.
Yeah.
So that part was just like, I'm over her. I'm totally over her when she's like, you can't fix it. And she collapses, and it's just like, yeah, like you said, a whole sob story and her jumping off a cliff and all that stuff. And then she's like, but I knew someone would save me. You're going to save me. And this whole like Picard's here to save her and rescue her and all this stuff.
And then she drops an I love you on him. And I was like, nope.
She kisses him and says, I love you. And I wrote in my notes in all caps, yikes, red alert.
Yeah.
And that's when I wrote, this gives me misery vibes, is right there when she was like,
yes,
I love you, because that was very creepy. And Picard is just like, well, it's like, what do you say to that? And
just so you know, yeah, he's like, I'm married. I'm gay and married. Like, okay, just
yes, I'm gay and married. And and I just, I mean, everything about this was so creepy. And I kept kind of switching in my mind, like, what if this was a man and a woman, and how I would feel as the woman trapped in the situation?
It would feel totally rapey. It would feel
totally
rapey.
Yeah. But then I also thought, even with the way as it is, it still feels very rapey, because he is incapacitated. He's this, so it's like, now it's even footing. You know, at one point she wrestles him to the ground and she's like on top of him and kissing him and stuff. And I was just like, oh, like all this was very not triggering, but just so disturbing, which misery is very disturbing, because in that as well, like the woman has complete control because the man is like incapacitated. And so it's so creepy. And now I'm like, Picard, work faster, but he can't, because she freaking fried the one thing that was supposedly going to save her. And she had no idea. So I'm like, what is he going to do? What is he going to do?
And also I want to make it a point to say that I think if the gender roles had been reversed, it would definitely feel very like rapey, but it totally feels rapey now with a woman having power over this. Well, whenever people say like, oh, men can't be raped, it's like, yeah, no, they absolutely can. They completely can. And that it does happen, unfortunately. But yeah, so it feels really scary. And so he kind of starts figuring out, he's like, maybe I can like use this to sort of trek like a power cell together or something. Like, it's, you know, so he finally gets this thing together, and
yeah, he MacGyvers something.
And he's like, okay, the power cell is ready. We got to get this to the shuttle. And Anna says, well, it's not safe out for a couple of hours. And Picard's like, well, we got to get this thing out. Like, this is an old power cell from the ship. It's already going to last for a couple of
hours.
Yeah. And she starts doing this thing that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like, my skin is crawling the whole time. She goes, Jean-Luc, it's too dangerous. And I was like, did he give her his first name? Like, you know, like, he's suspicious AF and rips off the restrictor. And it turns out he didn't have any broken bones at all. And she's like, Jean-Luc, I was trying to protect you. Jean-Luc, don't leave me. Jean-Luc, have some soup. Jean-Luc, is that a button? Like, it's just like, stop using his first name. Stop it. It's really creepy. And he's like, wait a minute. I find it extremely hard to believe that you destroyed the one piece of equipment that could get us out of here after 7 years on your own. Like, you would be extra careful with that piece if this is your one hope. So he confronts her, and she does the whole fatal attraction, like, I love you, and throws Picard to the ground. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, she's like, you should love me. And she's kissing him, and he's like, get off me. And I am just writing, dear God.
Seriously, this is time to take that power cell and hit her over the head. Do what
Smack
you need to do.
Over the head.
But that wasn't necessary.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God.
So we're like, oh, so 7 years did make her crazy. Okay. So
or something.
There was some kind of effect, but she's like, she stands up and, she doesn't hurt him any further other than throwing him to the ground and stuff. So she stands up and she's just like, you don't love me. I failed, or something like that. And then she just like in despair leaves. And while he's laying there on the ground, you hear click, and she's locked the door again. You're like, come on, dude. Like, if you failed, why are you still keeping this man here? Like, if you want to really get your revenge, kick him out of your perfect little shelter and leave him on his own devices. But he locks him in, and he's like, no. He grabs a crowbar, because for some reason there's a crowbar inside, and he's like, going to try to get out of there somehow. And then suddenly he hears a man's voice who's like, hello, is anybody out there? And Picard's like, yes, I'm here. The door's right here. And starts banging on the door with the crowbar, like, open the door. Yeah. The door opens, and it's Vival. And he's like, I thought you were dead like 4 days ago.
Yeah. And he's like, well, my species can slow our metabolic rates until the body heals itself, which can appear death-like. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea, right? You just, your metabolic slow all the way down so you can repair. Very kind of Borgy almost. And he was like, who was the woman I saw running away from here? And I was like, Vival, don't you know the answer to that? But okay, whatever. Fine. We're going to play this game.
Well, and here's how he says it. He goes, was that the woman you were talking about? Because he says there's a woman or whatever. He goes, was that the woman you were talking about? Do you think that woman might potentially hurt herself? Because there's a precipice nearby and I saw her running towards it. Wow, that's a whole lot of exposition for you just came out of the woods and turned the corner and saw this freighter.
Yeah, he's got a whole story written now. It's like, really? Okay. So they're like, fine, let's go looking for her. And they decide to split up.
They're like Picard's idea. This is
ridge
classic
extends for
Federation.
Yeah, the ridge extends for a kilometer in either direction. And Picard goes, we can search it twice as fast if we separate. Are you serious right now? Don't let this mofo out of your sight. You have just been alone with a captor, and you're like, I just found someone who can get me out of here. Let's split up so I'm alone again. What are you thinking? Picard in end of season 6 and 7, he is not making some good choices. It might be time for another vacation, buddy. Because like
we need another
get your head right.
Holiday.
Yeah, something. I was like, you need to get your head right, because this is like, don't do that. That is no. Of course, we find Anna, who's distraught on the edge of the cliff, and she's like, don't come any closer, I'll jump. And when which of course he gets closer to her, he spots the necklace that's back on Anna's neck, and he's like, wait, are you and Vovol working together? And I was like, oh, so close.
because that necklace was back in the freighter. When she wrestled him to the ground, the necklace broke off.
Yes.
And it was like still in his hand or whatever when he stood up, and he threw it back down and was like, I don't need anything to do with this.
Nope. Did you also notice? And here's where I thought he was actually going to put 2 and 2 together. Because I'm like, okay, Vovol is clearly this woman in some other shapeshifter form or something. But I was like, oh, the necklace, when he examined the necklace after she stormed out, it was the same shape. The little pendant was the same exact shape of this little piece of like metal embellishment that Vovol had on his uniform when he picked up Picard and they were about to go to the Yarn homeworld. So it's like, oh, this is like a little detail. Like he had like a little pendant on his uniform.
Yeah,
it's the same pendant on the necklace.
I didn't notice that until he pushed the necklace, and I was like, was that always there? But I did not notice that at all. I did not notice that at all.
Oh yeah,
so,
no, I noticed
and I wouldn't have noticed the necklace either, except for the fact that Picard made a show of looking at the necklace and throwing the necklace down, or else I wouldn't have even. And then also, if he hadn't said, "Where'd you get that necklace?" and the camera zoomed in on it, I would have missed that.
Yeah. Well, so she's like, "Tell me you love me, or I'll jump." And Picard's like, then jump. Like, I'm not going to tell you that. Which I was like, good, way to take some power back, buddy. Because like, I would have done the same. I'd have been like, no, I'm not going to have you force
just held me
something.
Captive. Get out of here.
And then you like force, like you like kiss raped me. Like, no.
Yeah, you held me captive. You tried to molest me in some kind of way. Who knows what you would have done if I was even less strong. Yeah. And then now you want me to have sympathy for you.
Yes. So no. So she's like, I failed. And she touches her necklace and turns into Vovol. So he's an ambassador sent to learn about the concept of love. So several years ago, it turns out, they found the remains of this Tyrellian freighter and the logs of a human woman who had been stranded there for 7 years. Then a human male crashed on the planet and she nursed him back to health. And in the logs, she spoke of love, antagonism, and pleasure. And these are concepts that the ERNs are very familiar with. So he was sent to experience love. And he thought the way that he would do it was by sort of reenacting this thing that happened. Mm-hmm. Right? We never know what happened to the woman and that guy. And maybe she nursed him back to health and his ship wasn't too badly damaged. So they could just get out of there and off they went. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Turns out the damage to the shuttle isn't what it seems. It's absolutely totally fine. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh,
probably even replicated that piece that was all burned. It probably wasn't even...
so. Mm-hmm. Probably so. So I love that Picard is the diplomat that he is, because I would have been like, I'm sorry, you just did all of this to me. Like, I'm going to throw you off this cliff now.
Right. Like, no way. Then Vovol asks him, he goes, was this wrong? Mm-hmm. Maybe you should have asked that at the beginning of this whole situation.
Yeah. Before we go kidnapping someone and stranding them and then molesting them and then all this other shit. Physically hurting them with the restrictor and all that. Probably should have checked this through first.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is what ambassadors are for. So you talk to like a human ambassador and see, is this a good plan? Yeah. But he's basically, we're seeing this was completely innocent on the part of the Inarans. There was nothing malicious in them. They were just legitimately curious. And Picard very kindly explains that what you have done here in my culture would be considered a crime. Yep. And Vovol looks at him puzzled and goes, crime? Because they also apparently don't have or understand crime, which I guess is good for them. Yeah. Because who knows what else they might have done to experience crime or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right?
But so since we know that this was all just part of their diplomatic missions, all's well that ends well, and they're instantly forgiven. Man, get out of here. These Inarans would never darken my door again. They would not be allowed on my ship. They would not be coming to parties that I host. Nothing with these people at all.
No chocolate for you. So on the ship, on the Enterprise, the team is saying goodbye to the ERNs. And Worf was kind enough to do 11 hours of like what I think was just like his Klingon calisthenics program with Byleth. And Worf says it was excruciating. And Riker kind of like hard pats Worf on the back to be like, I knew you could do it, buddy. And did you notice Michael Dorn's face was like, like he's so sore that when he got smacked on the back. It was very, very like a really subtly done like comedy bit. I thought it was really funny. Now, Loquel gives Deanna some bioenzymatic crackers that are very like neutral flavored. And she's like, after the past few days, I could use some bland food. And Voval apologizes if he offended Picard, but Picard says that humans try to live a balanced life, and it's quite refreshing to meet a species who take things to the furthest extremes. And I was like, really? Klingons, anyone? Vulcans, anyone? Romulans? Ferengi? Alexander? Anybody?
It's not refreshing at all. Like, nothing about that's refreshing. It's not even pleasant. A shit ton of people and
species who take things to the extremes. Like, did we need this? No, but whatever. It's fine.
The sentient sand was extreme. The crystalline entity is extreme. Lore is extreme.
My God, yeah. What was that sludge monster that killed Tasha?
Argus?
Armus. He was extreme AF. You know what? We've only met extreme species. Why don't we meet some neutral species? Okay, whatever. This episode was not worth our time. I give it like a D-. It sucked.
I was thinking about some kind of grading system, but I didn't think of actual grades.
You get a D-, dude.
I was thinking I was thinking a grading system like this is a season 1, this is a season 2, or whatever.
But this does feel pretty season 2. This feels pretty season 2.
I would give it season 2. The characters are very well written.
Yes.
I would say they're not like season 1 where it's like, I don't know what we're doing with these people.
Yeah.
But the story itself was just didn't go anywhere. It was just pointless. I was trying to think like what could have made this better. And I didn't really have an answer, but after talking with you, I think focusing on the misery angle, focusing on the crash landing, making it one storyline instead of 3 storylines would have been great. Maybe they could have just had those two, just Picard and the ambassador, the pilot who's taking him to the ship, to their home world. But everything goes wrong. There's no reason the Enterprise is going to look for them because they're not expecting him back for 7 days.
Yeah.
They could have maybe done some of that. I think that storyline, while that storyline was really creepy and uncomfortable, at least it was a story.
It was a story, whereas Byleth and Loquel didn't have a story. They were just there. Couple of fun facts. This is one of only 3 TNG episodes that doesn't feature the bridge at all. The other 2 were Family, which we have already seen when everybody goes on Earth. And then the next one is Dark Page, which we haven't seen yet. And then it turns out, I thought this was kind of funny and ironic. Chocolate covered raisins were originally bought for Loquel's poker game snack, but it was changed at the last minute when it was discovered that the actor Paul Eating-Glass is allergic to chocolate altogether. So I don't know what he was eating the entire time.
Gosh.
But Loquel wasn't actually eating chocolate because the actor is allergic to chocolate, which I was like, wow, talk about bad casting right there. he did a wonderful job.
And it had to be chocolate because it had to be Troy's favorite food.
Yes. Yeah. What are your final thoughts on this episode?
I'm gonna agree with you. D-.
Yeah. Forgettable, which is why I forgot it completely.
Yeah, I put that it's not terrible because it didn't make me angry to watch it. Yeah. But it also, because, we've had episodes like that where I'm like literally angry that I had to watch it. So it didn't make me angry, but it just was not great. Like nothing about it was great. And yeah, it's very forgettable. You're right. And I never want to watch it again. What about you?
Same. I never again. It just sucked. But, what are you going to do? You're going to have hits and misses like that. They can't all be Yesterday's Enterprise. They can't all be, Descent Part 1 and 2. And this is the kind of the first foray into season 7. the season opener, to me, in my mind, kind of never really counts as the new season because it's like wrapping up the storyline from the previous episode.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if this is our start to season 7, I'm kind of not excited about it. But yeah, it's what it is. However, hopefully next week things get better when we break down season 7, episode 3, Interface. Guys, thank you so much for hanging with us through this misery marathon, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.